The conference room hovered above the waterfront like a transparent nerve ending, all glass and steel, exposed to the gray sprawl of Seattle beyond it. At 9:10 a.m., the tide was low, the shoreline a patchwork of dark soil and cranes that moved with mechanical patience. Inside, the air was cooler than necessary, conditioned into neutrality. The faint rhythm of machinery drifted up. From the site below, a distant reminder that time, unlike opinions, never paused. Logan Hayes stood at the head of the table with a remote in his hand, the glow of the screen reflecting off the glass walls. He had slept 5 hours, maybe less. His morning had begun before sunrise, packing a lunch for his daughter, tying a shoelace she could never quite manage on her own, promising he'd be home in time for dinner. Routine steadied him. Precision kept things upright. He clicked to the next slide. This section of the waterfront, he said, keeping his voice even, has a history of soil, movement. Traditional foundation systems will hold, for now. But over time, the stress compounds. Across the table, a row of executives leaned back in their chairs, hands folded, eyes trained on the screen. Some nodded. Others stared without expression. Logan continued. The alternative is reinforced micropiles. Smaller footprint, deeper anchoring. It reduces long-term risk, cuts material costs by nearly 10%, and shortens the schedule by at least 2 weeks. The word costs shifted the room. Pens paused mid-note. A few heads tilted. At the far end of the table sat Cassandra. Right, her posture immaculate, hands resting lightly on a leather-bound folder. She wore black, as always, tailored, sharp, unyielding. Her dark hair was pulled back cleanly, exposing a face that revealed nothing before she chose to speak. She waited until Logan finished. No, she said. The word landed without force, but it carried weight. Conversations stilled. The hum from the site seemed louder in its wake. Logan met her gaze. No as in you disagree with the data, or no as in this is not the plan approved by the board, Cassandra replied. Her tone remained calm, controlled. We do not make structural changes midstream without full reauthorization. It's not a cosmetic change, Logan said. It's a safety consideration. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. And safety is precisely why we follow established protocols. A murmur passed down the table. Logan felt it, the subtle shift, the familiar warning to stand down, to take the loss quietly and regroup later. He didn't. With respect, he said, protocols are frameworks, not blindfolds. The soil reports. I've reviewed them, Cassandra cut in, extensively, and I'm accountable for every decision tied to this project. Deviations increase exposure. Logan's jaw tightened. He glanced at the screen again, at the clean lines of the model he'd built, the calculations checked and rechecked at midnight while his daughter slept in the next room. He wasn't arguing for recognition. He was arguing because he had to. This isn't about pushing boundaries, he said. It's about preventing problems we'll be answering for later. Silence stretched. At the end of the table, Evan Miller sat with his notebook open, pen resting against the page. He hadn't spoken. Once. Mid-level management. Logistics oversight. Easy to overlook. Yet as Logan mentioned savings again, Evan's pen stilled. His gaze lifted, lingering a second longer than necessary before dropping. Back to the paper. Cassandra noticed none of it. Or perhaps she did and chose not to. We are not going off plan, she said. We move forward as approved. Her finality settled like frost. Logan exhaled slowly through his nose, the kind of breath meant to keep composure intact. Around him, chairs shifted. The meeting was already closing in people's minds. Decisions were easier when someone else bore the weight. He nodded once. Not in agreement, in acknowledgement. If conditions change, he said carefully, we'll be reacting instead of leading. Cassandra closed her folder. Thank you, Logan. This discussion is concluded. One by one, the executives stood, conversations resuming in hushed fragments as they filed out. The glass walls reflected their movement, layers of transparency and separation. Logan gathered his notes, the printed schematics heavier than paper should be. He turned to leave when Cassandra's voice stopped him. "Logan," she said. He looked up. "Stay." The room emptied completely. Outside, a crane swung slowly toward the water, steel cables humming. Cassandra gestured toward the chair across from her. "Close the door," she added. Logan reached for the handle. As the glass sealed them in, the city beyond blurred into muted gray, the rest of the world held at a careful distance. By 3:40 p.m., the light had changed. The gray morning had given way to a thin, slanted sun that slid across the glass walls of Cassandra Wright's office, cutting the room into sharp planes of brightness and shadow. The city outside looked distant, softened by glare, as if it belonged to someone else. Logan stood near the door while Cassandra remained by her desk, arms folded. The space between them felt measured, intentional, another boundary she controlled. "You put me in an impossible position in there," she said at last. "I presented facts," Logan replied. His voice was calm, but the effort it took showed in the way his shoulders stayed rigid. "That's my job," she exhaled, a sound close to a laugh but without humor. "Your job is to support the direction of the project." "My job," he said, "is to make sure it doesn't fail 6 months after we cut the ribbon." The silence that followed pressed in. Outside the office, footsteps passed down. The corridor, muffled by carpet and glass. Logan felt the faint vibration of activity beyond the walls. Life moving on while this moment stalled. "You think I don't see the risks?" Cassandra asked. She turned toward the window, the light catching the edge of her profile. "Every decision I make is reviewed by people who don't care how elegant your solution is. They care about exposure, about control." Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass, doubled by the city behind her. "I answer to the board," she continued. "If this goes wrong, it's my name attached, not yours." Logan stepped forward a fraction, then stopped himself. "I know the weight you're carrying," he said, "but this isn't about winning an argument. It's about doing right by the people who'll be working on that foundation for the next year, and the ones who'll rely on it after." She turned back to him, eyes sharp. "You think I don't care about them?" "I think you're afraid," he said, quietly. The word landed between them. Cassandra stiffened, then looked away again, jaw tightening. The sun shifted, its reflection sliding across the glass like a slow tide. "You don't get to diagnose me," she said. "No," Logan agreed, "but I get to speak up when something matters." Her hands unclenched. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. "I've spent years making sure nothing slips, because the moment it does, everything unravels." Logan saw it then, not weakness but the cost of precision. The constant vigilance. The fear that control, once loosened, could never be reclaimed. "I'm not asking you to lose control," he said. "I'm asking you to trust the work." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The glass around them reflected their outlines, close enough to blur, far enough to keep them separate. The air felt charged, fragile. Cassandra stepped closer. Not enough to touch, enough to make the space feel smaller. "You don't back down easily," she said. "Neither do you." Something shifted. Not an argument won or lost, but a tension that had been building for months, fed by late nights, shared pressure, and words left unsaid. Logan became acutely aware of her proximity, the faint citrus note he recognized but never acknowledged. The city outside seemed to hold its breath. It happened too fast to plan. A step, a reaction, a line crossed in, the space between thought and restraint. The moment was brief, electric, disorienting. Less a decision than a collision of exhaustion and intensity. Then Logan pulled back. "No," he said, breath unsteady, the word firm. He took another step away, re-establishing distance. "This isn't who we are. Not like this." Cassandra looked at him, surprise giving way to something harder to name. Regret, perhaps, or recognition. "You should go," she said. Logan nodded. He turned and reached for the door, the glass cool beneath his hand. As he stepped into the hallway, the office behind him sealed shut with a muted click. He walked a few paces before slowing. In the reflective surface of the glass wall, he caught a shape that didn't belong just for a second. A darker outline where the corridor bent, as if someone had paused there, watching, then moved on. Logan frowned, pulse quickening. He turned, but the hallway was empty, bathed in late afternoon light and the soft echo of distant footsteps. He told himself it was nothing. Reflections played tricks when the sun sat low. Still, as he headed toward the elevators, the sense of being observed lingered, thin and unsettling like a hairline crack in glass. At 11:48 p.m., Logan's apartment was quiet in the way only cities could manage at night. Never silent, just softened. Rain tapped lightly against the window, a patient rhythm that blurred the lights of Seattle into streaks of amber and white. The sound usually calmed him. Tonight it didn't. He sat at the small kitchen table with his laptop open, a mug of coffee gone cold beside it. Lily was asleep in the next room. Her door cracked the way she liked it, a nightlight casting a faint glow down the hallway. Logan checked his phone one last time to make sure it was charging, then turned back to the screen. He had barely begun reviewing the soil data again when a chime cut through the room. Email. The sound felt louder than it should have. He frowned, glancing at the sender field. No name, just a string of characters that meant nothing. Probably spam, he told himself. He clicked it anyway. The image loaded slowly. For a second, his mind refused to place it. Glass. Reflections. Two figures too close to ignore. Then the perspective snapped into focus and his stomach dropped. It was him and Cassandra. The angle was unmistakable. Taken from outside the office, through the glass wall, the city's reflection ghosting over their outlines. Her profile, his shoulder, a moment captured that should never have existed. Beyond those walls, below the image, a single line of text waited. "I know everything." Logan leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking beneath him. The rain seemed to grow louder, the city closer. He stared at the screen, forcing himself to breathe slowly, evenly. Panic would not help. Panic never did. Another chime followed almost immediately. A second email. Same sender. "No greeting. Asterisk send the original project files. The approved specifications. All of them. Asterisk." The words sat there, blunt and unadorned. Logan closed his eyes. The reflection in the hallway earlier. That afternoon rose unbidden in his mind. The shape that hadn't belonged. The sense of being watched he'd dismissed too easily. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't personal curiosity or gossip. It was calculated. Someone had been waiting. He opened the image again, studying the details with an engineer's precision. The clarity, the distance. Whoever had taken it knew where to stand, when to act. This wasn't an impulsive snapshot. It was leverage. Logan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. A dozen responses came to mind, questions, denials, demands, but he typed none of them. Instead, he saved the image to his desktop, then forwarded both emails to a secure personal account he rarely used. The click of the send button sounded final, like sealing a door. He glanced down the hallway toward Lily's room. The quiet there anchored him, pulled his thoughts back into order. This wasn't just about him. Or Cassandra. The files being demanded weren't harmless. They contained proprietary data, contracts, projections that could unravel months of work if misused. This was an attack on the project. On her. Logan rubbed his temples, fatigue pressing in. Cassandra's words from earlier replayed in his head. Asterisk, everything unravels. Asterisk, he understood now what she'd meant, though not in the way she'd intended. Control wasn't slipping because of innovation. It was slipping because someone had found a seam. His phone buzzed in his hand. Another email. Asterisk, you have time. Don't make this difficult. Asterisk. The simplicity of it chilled him. Logan stood and paced. The length of the kitchen, bare feet cold against the tile. He stopped by the window, watching rain trace uneven paths down the glass. The waterfront cranes were just visible in the distance, their silhouettes motionless against the night. He thought of Cassandra, alone in her apartment somewhere across the city, probably still awake, replaying the meeting in her own mind. He thought of the way her voice had tightened when she spoke about responsibility, about names attached to decisions. If the photo went public, it wouldn't matter what the truth was. Perception would do the damage. And the files, if they changed hands, could sink the entire development. Logan returned to the table and closed the laptop. The room fell darker without the glow of the screen, lit only by the muted city beyond the windows. There were options. He could refuse. He could go to legal. He could warn Cassandra and let the company handle it. Each path branched into consequences he could already map out, most of them ending the same way. Exposure, scrutiny, a storm he could not control. Or there was another way. He sat down slowly, the decision settling with unexpected clarity. If he removed himself, if he stepped out of the equation entirely, the leverage vanished. No more access. No more incentive. The threat would have nothing to grip. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But it was effective. Logan exhaled, the weight of it pressing into his chest. He opened his laptop once more, not to respond to the email, but to draft something else entirely. As the rain continued its steady percussion against the glass, Logan Hayes began to write the words that would change everything. Morning arrived clean and pale, the kind of Seattle light that made glass look sharper than it was. Logan reached the office before most of the floor filled, the lobby echoing with the soft whir of air systems waking up. He moved through security on instinct, badge tapping once, green light blinking. The sound lingered with him longer than usual. At his desk, he worked without urgency. There was no speech to rehearse, no argument left to make. He slid a manila envelope from his bag and set it squarely on the surface, aligning its edges with the grain of the wood. Inside lay, single page, brief, professional, unadorned. Effective immediately. He gathered his personal items slowly. A framed drawing Lily had given him, the small plant he never remembered to water, a notebook thick with calculations and coffee stains. When he finished, the desk looked like it belonged to someone else. Cassandra's door was open. She stood inside, reviewing something on her tablet, the morning light cutting across her office in hard lines. Logan knocked once, then stepped in. "What is this?" she asked, holding up the envelope after reading it. Her composure cracked, just enough to show disbelief beneath it. "You don't quit after one disagreement." "It wasn't one," Logan said. He kept his voice steady. "And this isn't about yesterday." Her eyes searched his face, frustration flaring. "Then talk to me. Don't do this." He set a thick folder on her desk, tabs neatly labeled, pages marked with careful notes. "Everything's here," he said. "The full analysis. Risks, contingencies. If you follow it, the project holds." She stared at the folder, then back at him. "You expect me to believe this is for my benefit?" "It's for the project," he replied. "And for the people building it." Silence pressed in. Cassandra's jaw tightened. "You're walking away at the worst possible moment." Logan met her gaze, wishing he could tell her the truth without pulling her into the fallout. "Take care of the team," he said quietly. Before she could respond, he turned and left, the door closing behind him with a muted click that sounded final. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, the lobby greeted him with brightness and space. He handed over his badge at the desk, the plastic light in his palm. The guard nodded, polite and indifferent. Outside, the parking lot stretched wide and nearly empty, asphalt still damp from the night rain. Logan paused beside his car, the building's glass facade, reflecting a version of himself that already felt distant. Across the city, Cassandra remained where he'd left her. Anger surged first, hot and immediate. She picked up the folder, Thumbed through pages she recognized, calculations she'd dismissed, projections she'd argued against. The clarity of it unsettled her. She closed her eyes, hearing his voice from the meeting replayed, without the edge she'd assigned to it. It's about doing right by the people. The words landed differently now. She opened the folder again, slower this time, reading instead of scanning. The logic was there, solid, thoughtful, conservative in all the ways that mattered. For the first time that morning, Cassandra sat down. Logan's day unfolded somewhere else entirely. By noon, he stood on the outskirts of the city, pulling on work gloves beneath a sky that threatened rain but held back. The site foreman handed him a hard hat and pointed toward a stack of lumber. No questions. No resumes. Just work. The rhythm came back quickly. Measure. Lift. Secure. Sweat gathered at his temples, grounding him in a way conference rooms never did. His hands ached by. Mid-afternoon, the honest soreness of effort felt earned. That evening he picked Lily up from school. She ran to him with her backpack bouncing, talking all at once about a spelling test and a drawing she wanted to finish. At home he made dinner, listened, nodded, laughed when appropriate. The world narrowed to what he could hold. Later, after she slept, Logan sat at the kitchen table. Again, the city lights outside were softer now, less demanding. He didn't open his laptop. There was nothing left to decide. Back at the office, long after the floor had emptied, Cassandra stood. Alone in the glass room, the folder lay open on the table, diagrams spread beneath the overhead lights. She traced a line with her finger, following the logic to its conclusion. He had been right. The realization settled quietly, heavier than any argument they'd had. She looked up at the reflection in the glass, at the city, at herself, and wondered when control had started to feel like fear. 2 weeks later, the rain returned the way it always did, without asking. It fell steadily over Seattle, washing the streets into mirrors and softening the city's edges. The waterfront project moved forward under floodlights and revised plans, cranes pivoting with renewed purpose. The numbers held. The schedule tightened. Quietly, decisively, Logan's solution did exactly what it was meant to do. Cassandra watched it happen from a distance. She read the reports late at night, alone in her apartment, the glow of her tablet reflecting off windows streaked with rain. Each update confirmed what she already knew. The foundation stabilized. Costs leveled. Delays evaporated. The board praised the execution without ever mentioning the name that had made it possible. Her chest tightened with every page. That night, she stood in the rain outside a modest building in the suburbs, water soaking through her coat, hair pinned to her face. She hesitated once, only once, before knocking. Logan opened the door barefoot, a worn sweater pulled over his shoulders. For a second, they simply looked at each other. The hallway light framed her, rain dripping onto the mat, eyes rimmed red from cold or something else. "I'm sorry," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. He stepped aside without speaking. Warmth wrapped around her as she crossed the threshold, the quiet hum of a home replacing the storm. Logan handed her a towel, and she took it with shaking hands, pressing it to her hair, her face. They sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, space between them filled by the sound of rain against the windows. "The project," Cassandra began. "It's working. Exactly the way you said it would." Logan nodded. "I'm glad." She turned toward him then, really looking. "Why did you leave?" He drew a breath, steadying himself. "Because I was asked to hand over the original files. The approved specs. All of them." Her brow furrowed. "Asked by who?" Logan reached for his laptop, opening it and turning the screen toward her. The image appeared familiar now, but no less unsettling. Cassandra inhaled sharply. "That was taken from outside my office," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "And it wasn't an accident." He told her everything then. The email, the demand, the timing, the reflection in the hallway. He'd dismissed until it was too late. As he spoke, The tension in Cassandra's shoulders shifted from confusion to understanding, then to something like grief. "You left to protect me," she said softly. "And the project," he replied. "If I stayed, the pressure wouldn't stop. This was the cleanest way to end it." Cassandra closed her eyes, the towel slipping from her hands. When she opened them again, tears spilled freely. "I was so focused on control," she said, "on not being the one blamed if things went wrong. I didn't see what I was becoming." Logan watched her, the weight he'd carried alone easing just a fraction. "You were under a lot," he said. "That's not an excuse," she replied. "I was wrong." The admission came with effort, but once spoken, it settled. "I thought authority meant never bending. I see now that it nearly broke everything." They sat in silence, the rain softening outside, their breathing slowing into something shared. "I don't want to run anymore," Cassandra said at last. "From this. From him." Logan nodded. "Neither do I." She wiped her eyes and looked at him, resolve sharpening her features. "We do this properly. Together." He stood and moved to the kitchen, returning with 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her, their fingers brushing briefly, a grounding human contact. She wrapped her hands around the warmth. For the first time that night, Cassandra smiled. Not the practiced version she wore in meetings, but something smaller and real. "Thank you," she said, "for trusting me enough to tell me the truth." Logan met her gaze. "Thank you for listening." Later, as the rain thinned to a whisper, Cassandra stood by the window, watching the city glow beyond. The glass, the image of the conference room surfaced unbidden. The long table, the glass walls, the way one man at the end had watched without speaking. Evan Miller. The memory sharpened, a detail snapping into place. His stillness, his focus when numbers were mentioned. Cassandra's reflection stared back at her, understanding dawning. She turned to Logan. "There's something else," she said quietly. The rain continued its gentle percussion, the night holding its breath as the next piece slid into view. The weeks that followed moved with deliberate precision. Not hurried, not reckless. Logan and Cassandra treated the problem the way they treated any complex build, by mapping it carefully, understanding the load, and reinforcing the weak points before anything collapsed. They met in neutral places at first. A quiet cafe halfway between downtown and the suburbs. No logos. No familiar faces. Rain-darkened windows. Low voices. Evan Miller's name surfaced again and again, no longer as a suspicion but as a pattern. "He had access," Logan said, sliding a printed timeline across the small table. Meeting schedules. Floor layouts. He knew when the office would be empty enough to watch without being noticed. Cassandra nodded slowly, and he was the only one who asked. For the cost projections after the meeting. Not for approval. For comparison. The pieces fit with unsettling ease. They didn't confront him immediately. Instead, they gathered what professionals gathered: metadata, access logs, email traces, camera timestamps. Cassandra reached out to a trusted security consultant she'd worked with years earlier, careful to keep the circle small. Every step followed process, every move documented. Only when the picture was complete did they allow themselves a direct encounter. They found Evan late one afternoon in a dim office reserved for overflow meetings, the lights half lowered, the city already turning amber beyond the windows. Logan stood near the door while Cassandra took the chair opposite Evan, her posture composed, unreadable. Evan looked up, surprised but not confused. His expression tightened as soon as he saw them together. "You wanted to talk?" he asked. Cassandra folded her hands on the table. "We wanted clarity." His gaze flicked to Logan, then back to her. "About what?" "About access," Logan said evenly. "And timing." Silence stretched. Evan leaned back, lips pressing into a thin line. "You're making assumptions." Cassandra slid a phone across the table, the screen lit with a time-stamped image, cropped, unremarkable at first glance. "We're confirming facts," she said. "This was taken from the corridor outside my office. Your access badge was logged there within the same minute. Evan's eyes hardened. Coincidence? Logan didn't move. Then help us understand why. The messages demanded files you alone requested copies of. The room felt smaller, the air denser. Evan's composure cracked, not into anger, but something meaner. Resentment. I built half the operational framework for that project, he said. And I watched you walk in and rewrite it in a week. Logan held his ground. I didn't take your work. You took the credit, Evan snapped. He looked at Cassandra now, bitterness spilling through restraint. You never listened. Not to me. Not to anyone who wasn't already winning. Cassandra absorbed the words without flinching. That doesn't justify what you did. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, Evan said. Quieter now. I just wanted leverage. The word hung there, small and ugly. There are consequences, Cassandra replied. And we're handling this properly. They stood together and left him there, the door closing without ceremony. What followed unfolded without spectacle. The consultant compiled. The evidence. Legal channels engaged. Access was revoked. Processes took over. Evan faded from their days not with drama, but with the dull finality of accountability. On a cool morning not long after, Cassandra walked into Logan's apartment holding a cardboard box. Her office items inside were neatly arranged. Folders, a framed certificate, a pen she favored. I resigned, she said simply. Logan searched her face. Are you sure? Yes, she replied. Relief edged her voice. I don't want to spend my life guarding walls anymore. They sat on the couch, the city quiet beyond the windows. The future hovered between them. Unformed, uncertain, and suddenly possible. Logan smiled faintly. Then let's build something that lasts. Cassandra nodded, a decision settling into place. Together. Outside, the clouds broke just enough for light to reach the pavement below, the rain finally easing. 1 year later, the morning sun rested gently on the edge of the city, warming the concrete and steel where Hayes Greenbuild had learned to stand. The new site rose on a quiet block near the water, clean lines, open space, and materials chosen with care. Nothing about it demanded attention, and yet everything about it felt deliberate. Logan adjusted the strap on a small yellow hard hat and handed it down. All right, he said, smiling. Safety first. Lily beamed as she set it on her head, the brim dipping over her eyes. She giggled and pushed it back, then took Cassandra's hand. The three of them walked together along the perimeter, wind moving lightly through the fencing. There was no rush, no meeting waiting to start, just the sound of gulls overhead and the soft clink of tools being set down. Cassandra paused to watch a crew pour a section of foundation. She wore a simple jacket now, no longer black, hair loose at her shoulders. The sharp edges that once defined her had softened, not dulled, but refined by something steadier. Why don't you wear black anymore? Lily asked suddenly, peering up at her. Cassandra laughed, surprised by the honesty of it. I guess I don't need to, she said after a moment. I like colors now. Logan caught her eye and nodded. It was a small exchange, but it carried the weight of a year's worth of change. That evening, the office lights glowed warm against the early dark. The space was modest. Exposed brick, long work tables, models lining the shelves, but it felt alive. The team had gone home hours earlier, leaving behind the quiet satisfaction of a good day's work. Logan set 2 plates on the table, the kind of dinner that didn't need ceremony. Cassandra watched him move with practiced ease, the confidence of someone who no longer measured his worth by titles. We did this, she said softly, gesturing around the room. We did, he replied. After they ate, Logan stood and reached into his pocket. His hands were steady, though his heart wasn't. There's something I want to ask you, he said. Cassandra tilted her head, curiosity flickering across her face. That sounds serious. It is, Logan said and smiled. He took a step closer, then another, until the city noise outside faded into something distant. He lowered himself to one knee. Cassandra's breath caught. "I took one step forward a year ago without knowing where it would lead," Logan said. "It cost me comfort. It gave me everything else. You stood with me when it mattered. You chose honesty over fear. I want to keep building with you, not just projects, but a life." He opened the box. Inside, a simple ring caught the light, understated and certain. Cassandra covered her mouth, tears gathering without warning. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she laughed, a sound full and unguarded, and nodded. "Yes," she said. "Yes." Logan stood, and she wrapped her arms around him, the ring cool and solid as it slipped onto her finger. Lily clapped from her chair, delighted. Later, they stood by the window together, city lights reflecting back at them. Cassandra leaned into Logan's shoulder, the past finally quiet. "I used to think control was strength," she said. "Now I know it's trust." Logan kissed her temple. "And kindness," he added. "It holds more than steel ever could." Outside, the wind carried the distant hum of the city, steady and alive. Inside, the warmth lingered. Some steps changed everything. Others simply revealed what had been there all along. They had taken one forward together,